You know, when we hear data in schools, our minds usually jump straight to things like report cards, right? Test scores. But what if data could be something more? What if it could be used to build this incredible preventative safety net that catches kids before they even start to fall behind in reading? Well, today we're going to look at exactly how schools are doing that, moving from just collecting numbers to actually changing lives with them.
So let's start with just a number, 29%. Kind of hangs in the air, doesn't it? This was the average English comprehension rate for third graders in the Philippines from a big national study back in 2019. It's a really startling number. And on its own, all it really tells us is, hey, we've got a problem. It doesn't tell us what the problem is, so think of it as a mystery we're going to solve together today.
Now, it's so easy to see a number like that and think, oh man, schools must be failing. But the research, it actually points to something else entirely. The challenge isn't that schools are getting worse, it's that the world is changing. Societal demands for literacy are just getting higher and higher. The bar for what it means to be a successful reader is constantly rising. And that means we need smarter, better systems to get every single kid over it.
And this is really where the urgency kicks in. This isn't just some academic exercise, it's a matter of fairness. Why? Because these reading gaps, they often start before a child ever sets foot in a kindergarten classroom. And that makes finding these kids early with a really accurate data a fundamental issue of educational equity. It's about giving every kid a fair shot from day one.
Okay, so what's the solution? How do schools do this? Well, it's a framework called the Multi-Tiered System of Supports, or MTSS. And I know that sounds super technical. Don't let the name scare you. The best way to think about it is just as an elegant, school-wide safety net. It's a way of organizing everything a school has, its teachers, its programs, its time, to make absolutely sure every student gets the exact support they need to succeed.
So it works in this really powerful continuous cycle. First, you screen everybody, universal screening, to see who might be at risk. Then, based on that, you provide different levels of support. Some kids are fine with the main classroom instruction, others need small group help, and some might need one-on-one. Then, you're constantly monitoring their progress to see if what you're doing is actually working. And finally, you use all that data to make smart decisions about what to do next. It's not static, it's a living, breathing system.
And this brings us to one of the most powerful ideas in this whole system. The data isn't just about figuring out which kids need help, it's also a health check for the school's main curriculum. There's this kind of rule of thumb, the 80-20 rule. If your screening shows that more than 20% of your students are struggling, the system makes you stop and ask a really tough question. Is the problem with all these individual kids, or is the problem with our core instruction? It forces schools to fix the system, not just try to fix the students.
This whole approach also leads to a really crucial shift in how we talk about students. We stop using what's called deficit language. So instead of saying, he is a Tier 3 student, which basically labels the kid, we shift to, he is a student who receives Tier 3 supports. You see the difference? The tiers describe the service, the support, not the child's identity. It's a small change in words that makes a massive difference in a school's culture.
All right, so we've got the framework. But, a framework on paper is one thing. How does a school actually turn all this data into real action? How do we get from a spreadsheet to a strategy that a teacher can use tomorrow morning in their classroom?
Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is frequency, how often we check in. For most kids who are doing fine in the main classroom, that's Tier 1, a checkup 3 times a year is plenty. But for students getting more targeted help in Tier 2, we need to check in, say, every couple of weeks. And for kids getting the most intensive support in Tier 3, we're monitoring them weekly. Why? Because the research is pretty clear. It takes about 6 to 9 data points to know for sure if a new strategy is working. For our most vulnerable kids, we need more data more often.
And to get that data, teachers use different tools for different jobs. On one side, you've got things called curriculum-based measurements, or CBMs. Think of these as the what tool. They're quick, 1-minute checks that are super reliable and give you the hard numbers on a specific skill. Then, on the other side, you have things like running records. This is your why tool. It's a much deeper diagnostic look at how a student is reading, to help a teacher understand why they're making certain errors. You absolutely need both the what and the why to get the full story.
Okay, which brings us all the way back to our mystery. Remember that 29% comprehension rate we started with? Now that we understand the tools and the system, let's look at the incredible system-wide X-ray that finally revealed what was really going on.
Okay, just look at this chart. It's fascinating. In Filipino, their native language, the students' reading speed and their comprehension are almost perfectly aligned. Makes sense. Now, look at English. Their fluency, how fast they can read the words aloud, is almost the same as it is in Filipino, so they can decode the text just fine. But look at their comprehension. It completely falls off a cliff, all the way down to 29%.
This data pointed to something very specific, a comprehension gap. The students could say the words, but they didn't have the background vocabulary or oral language skills to understand what those English words actually meant. The problem wasn't phonics, it was language comprehension. And boom, just like that, one chart gave an entire nation's education system a crystal clear mission. That's the power of turning good data into smart decisions.
So let's bring this all home. Because these systems and these charts and all these data points, they're not just technical exercises. They're actually designed to build something deeply human, a culture of shared responsibility.
And really, this is the ultimate goal. When a school gets this right, it creates shared ownership. A child who's struggling to read is no longer just Miss Smith's problem to solve all by herself behind a closed classroom door. That child becomes the shared responsibility of the entire school community. It becomes our kid, and every adult in that building is part of the solution.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. In our own schools, in our communities, are we just collecting numbers and filing them away? Or are we using them to build that safety net, to really understand our students, and to make sure that every single child gets the chance to become a successful, confident reader? Thanks so much for digging into this with me.